one. Are you gonna give me orders?
But I do believe we're about to get ready. So this is going to be a very cool TVZ, guys, because it's also going to be on the same server. SpeCial over in Korea is going to be able to showcase all of his pure magic micro when it comes to 2-raxing, which never loses. Right, Morty?
Yes, one we've got to watch out for. SpeCial 2-raxes. He then has to win the series, right? Otherwise, TLO is wrong.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't have to win the series. He has to win the game.
Well,
that's a bit of a stretch. If you 2-rax once in the best of 5 series, you have to win the series. That would be a bold
that's
call.
Just how good. I just thought that's how good 2-rax is.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's maybe it is that good. But that would have been a TLO's been doing too many softballs. You know, it's got to really just like give us a surprise. Guessing that I'd get all mine correct yesterday, that was easy. You know, it totally happened. Do something extreme, my dude, for next weekend. Which I do believe we'll be doing another round next weekend, so make sure to get your true falses in for the next thread. We are into game number 1 on Simulacrum. In the top left, as the blue Zerd, we do have soO.
Wow, soO's fan club showed up, huh? He's in the bottom right. Our red Terran player is SpeCial. But they're just a fan of TVZ in general.
Well, who isn't? It's actually managed to have been the probably the best matchup throughout the entirety of StarCraft 2, and I'm sure many people would argue for Brood War as well. I think so. We do have a pool first, so either soO is a little wary of the 2-rax, which we did see at least like once every TVZ yesterday, or actually wants to get some little tiny bits of pressure early on, expecting SpeCial not to SCV scout, which he actually is not going to do. I was going to say that was a pretty late one, but nope, not going to do it.
Yep, just going to be expanding here SpeCial. And the Ling's on the way from soO. We'll see if he has anything planned beyond this. Obviously, a lot of Zergs are just going pool first to make sure they can deal with the 2-rax easily enough. So, yeah, it's something that we're seeing more and more of, and obviously you can still use it to kind of get into a good position in the game, right? You can still put some pressure on, you keep the Reaper at home. There is a slight economic disadvantage, especially because you end up making 6 Lings. But in this scenario, it's such a minor one that it doesn't really matter too much. Some Zergs really dislike just being off from where they usually are. That's the only real kind of thing to say about it, so... Because Reaper obviously doesn't know about this, so this is best case scenario here from soO. Now SpeCial is only just finding out this is pool first, and the Reaper doesn't even turn around right away. He has been building Marines, so let's see how well they can defend, as this is going to be at the very least a delay. He actually didn't even build the racks in position for Warlock, so this is going to be very frustrating. And soO, with some good opportunity to get damage done, doesn't quite get the SCV on the factory, but look at all the SCVs and the mining time he's buying for himself.
Yeah, there's a lot of lost mining time. Like, it's nice to get a couple of SCVs, especially one on the command center, obviously, but on top of the command center being delayed, it's further delayed. So no SCV was sent down to try and sneak its way over there, and then all of this lost mining time. So it's kind of tricky. 2 Marines do live, which is actually pretty cool, so they'll be able to deny any Overlord scouts, which is nice. But if he was going to do the barracks liftoff to kill the Overlord, that would have been really, really off-timed. Obviously, because he wanted to wait for the reactor, he let the Lings in, and they also got a full scout, so they saw no second gas geyser being taken, so they would then assume it's a 3CC if they didn't actually see it. That was just really, really beautiful stuff there from soO, who got everything you would want from 6 Lings early.
Yeah, it's actually, you really couldn't ask for much more than that. It's pretty much the best case scenario. So that's all because SpeCial just doesn't SCV scout. One SCV scout, you see its pool first, you leave your Reaper at home, or you're a little bit more cautious about the Lings, and it's a completely different story. So this is just a greedy opener from SpeCial. Obviously continues to be greedy now with the 3rd CC, and soO will start a Roach Roaring. Obviously he knows it's a 3CC off the single gas that he saw. So now Roach Roaring coming up, and we could absolutely see something like a 39 drone just Roach Roll in here with the Roachling attack.
It's a little bit rare nowadays, I would say, to see they actually know so far in advance that it's a 3CC.
Yeah.
You know, Terran players are hiding it where SpeCial is, so the Overlord on the left side doesn't see it so easily, type of thing. But when you do see it that quickly, it does actually open up the option for a Roach Warren. Plus, if you're already inclined to do something a little more aggressive, that's just like the press go button, right? So I would actually really like it. It's a little more awkward if you see it later, but soO is going to make a handful of roaches and really try and hide those if he can against those Hellions, because the Hellions are the thing that's out here scouting, and Fusion Core is on the way. That Battle Cruiser would take a very long time to actually pop out and help.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? This is going to hit so smoothly that the BC might get up to start defending, but then you've already taken a lot of damage, and soO...
Oh, good. Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay, so he goes for the Banshee first, so he actually is going to have a Banshee to help. No, he cancels and builds the BC.
Oh, okay.
So usually you start building the Banshee while the Fusion Core is still building, right? And in that time, you scout with the Hellions, and then the Hellions get the info of roaches, you continue to build the Banshee. But this time he kind of started to build it, kind of felt like he'd figured it out, and then he just cancels it. Now, oh my... No, he just canceled the extra bunkers because he scanned the third base and there's saturation there, so he thinks this is more than
no.
Well, no. These roaches show up and the first bunker will not be completed. I mean, there isn't much of a follow-up behind this from soO, at least, right? There is already just more drones on the way. He's at 49 already, so there's that to think of. This isn't the worst-case scenario for SpeCial because there is macro behind it.
It's really actually a fantastic scenario. Like SpeCial, there's definitely question marks for him that, in a different game would have been a disaster. But in this case, all the question marks were just answered enough to defend enough, basically, the exact amount that you want, which is not to over-dedicate, but also not under-dedicate and lose a bunch of SPVs. To lose a bunker, to lose your Hellions and your Reaper, that is not a very big deal. All the SCVs basically survived. I mean, it's still here to help out against run-bys, so why not? And now you have the Battle Cruiser to harass, which is something that soO... Talking a lot about what SpeCial was scouting. soO never scouted the Fusion Core, and this was a big surprise. Of course, Queen's plentiful enough to push this back, but lots of lost mining time there.
This is actually kind of amusing because the scan on the third base, SpeCial saw the saturation. I thought it was soO being smart and like pre-transferring drones, so if it was seen, he sells an idea that he's got a third saturated when he doesn't really. He'd actually had just built drones already, so SpeCial was kind of right to cancel those bunkers, and the information he gained there, which seemed initially like wrong information, was completely on point. Nice play so far from SpeCial in that BC, just getting some starter damage done. As you will see, missiles, commitment to roaches here from soO with the Spire on the way up as well. But this is just one BC into Bio from SpeCial, which has been a very popular choice as of late, rather than the typical 3 BC into mech.
Right, yeah, that's actually usually the way it goes. I mean, maybe 2 BC if you're going to go into Bio, but yeah, if you're actually going to go into mech, we see 3 Battle Cruiser, we see Yamato. The fact that he's going into Bio and not dedicating to Battle Cruisers might actually put soO in a very awkward position. With the dedication to Roaches as well, this was definitely a Corruptors for Battle Cruisers, Roaches for the ground bust, probably. And instead, it is not the case. So SpeCial just got a scan on that Spire, but I don't know if he really... I don't know if he knows that he's tricked him out or is thinking like he saw the roaches and is expecting those upgrades as well. He might have seen the roach warren jiggling. There's something I can say about that. But it is going to be Mutas first, not Corruptors, which would not have been a very fantastic choice.
Yeah, so this basically from soO becomes a bit of a harass with the Mutas and then try and hit something of a roach timing. It feels like everything's a bit out of sync to begin with, though, because usually when you play a roaches like this, you want to hit like a 1-1 roach attack when 1-1 is done, and he just doesn't really have the roach count you'd want for that. Usually you're kind of closing in on being maxed out and, doubling up on the Terran's army supply at that stage. That's obviously not happening here, so yeah, it feels like soO's in a bit of trouble. Let's see what these Mutas can do. I fear not a lot because this turret's almost done. That's going to push this back as well.
And not that the Mutas are really going to tackle a Battle Cruiser. It's still like the one Battle Cruiser probably isn't worth getting those Corruptors, but
yeah,
that Battle Cruiser is going to be present and helpful for the any roach push that could be on the way. Like you're talking a lot about the 1-1 roach push, which is so common actually when you go for roaches. But yeah, the timing felt a little bit off. It was a little bit weird. They're still kind of reading into each other's builds. So soO might still be hitting an attack. I mean, he's maxing out, right? But the upgrades are going to be a little more awkwardly looking as we see them still upgrading. SpeCial, what is that tank count? Does he see this? He does. Again, the Battle Cruiser can kind of bully this back, but only so much. He also needs the ground army in position, well protected, and it is 4 tanks. Certainly a good start.
4 tanks are in good positions as well, right? They're not all easily corrosively biled all at once, or, they're not all in reach of Ravagers from the very start when they push in from this top side. And I do wonder if we see maybe the SCVs pulled here. Oftentimes you pull SCVs to help buffer for this, but you might just not need them in this case. Beetlejuice do absolutely nothing here to begin, and Wow, just no tanks go down at all. So
Okay.
tanks are going to be firing throughout the entirety of this, and that is just going to be a huge cleanup from SpeCial. Easy hold. Did he even lose a siege tank? I really don't know if he did. Big
Pretty
tank
sure he
shots,
did.
and that was massive for him.
That was a disaster for soO. I was like, yeah, okay, I can see it. Like, you have like a 60 supply lead, but it's roaches. There is the tanks well positioned. Really was not super convincing. Hitting with the 1-1, sooner than that, that's when you maybe find some success. But as late as it was, as good as SpeCial was macroing, as well as he was figuring out what his opponent was doing, it just was not looking too great. So those battle crews are available. His tanks are a little more perseviable in this choke, but he's actually just pushing through. The mass amount of medevacs also really helping into sustained damage that is roaches. And while the Ravagers finally get on top of the tanks, it was at a severe loss of soO's own army. Some of the Ravagers will end up living, and that is fantastic news as he does push this back. +1 or +2 care it also finished, which is very helpful.
Yeah.
But that was a little scary there. Maybe SpeCial getting a little too overeager, being in that choke like that.
Yeah, obviously the +2 carapace finishing means that you don't really push through this Roach Ravager force as quickly as maybe SpeCial was hoping. I don't mind it. The only thing that's really scary is maybe losing a tank count. He's only on one factory still, right? So it's really hard to rebuild the tank count, and that's what really holds this game. And this is basically a second wave of the all-in from soO, 69 drones, and he's not moving off of that. And that's not enough to play a longer TVZ on. This is just 2-2 upgrades, and let's see if it can win the game. And not having the tanks for that might hurt. Let's see, there's a lot of roaches still alive on the left side, and there's a lot of Ravagers. I'm surprised soO has not found a Corrosive Bile on this front siege tank at the very least. He finds one, but then the others are very late to it. It's going to be enough as SpeCial types out GG. And soO is going to take a first game after SpeCial did go a bit too overcommitted across the map. He did lose the tank count. And then you just don't have the backline that you really need to hold the second wave. I think SpeCial was expecting soO to be macroing a bit more behind that at that stage. And instead of macroing up, soO was just building roaches for the second wave. And if soO had added on like 10 to 15 drones, maybe that attack kills him. If soO had added on 10 to 15 drones and defends that attack, he doesn't have such a committed attack across the map or so, right? Or he doesn't have as many units to really hit as quickly, so SpeCial has more time to rebuild tanks. But in the way that it played out, SpeCial kind of just got rolled by the fact that this wasn't really enough there after losing every tank. It's as simple as that. You need those tanks in that scenario.
You certainly do. I think the real hindsight here is just watching that battle unfold again. The eagerness to kill his opponent. Thinking that he had some decent upgrades, but actually being behind that +2 carapace. soO had already dedicated to it even before he did the first push. It was a bit surprising. His tanks being all clumped up, his army not being able to do that dance, right? Because I think if he goes there and contains on the other side of the choke and just kind of pokes in, pokes out, and then drops somewhere else, right? We're talking about a fairly good game for him. Eventually he gets 2-2. Like the magic moment for Terran's a lot of time having that 2-2 and then a decent number of medevacs and decent number of tanks. But he thought he could push and win before that. Ends up actually throwing away that support, the tanks really being so much of a big deal like you were talking about. But the engagement was just over eager, and the defense not possible against what was also becoming a 2-2 Roach army just before SpeCial's 2-2 had kicked in. So GG, bit of a back and forth right there. Fun game to start things off, though, especially with the good reads on soO's attempted attack, and then another attack looking so good for SpeCial, but not good enough to just easy peasy stim and win. So on to Nightshade, which I want to say is another map I see a lot of the 1-1 roach pushes on, just to get rid of that whole dynamic of the fourth base around that ledge. But we'll talk more about that when we actually get an overview of the map. In the bottom right, he's down 1. It is the red Terran, SpeCial.
Up against the blue Zerg in the top left-hand side, was able to salvage that game. It is soO.
Okay. Forward wall off already.
Multiple Rax Reaper.
I mean, it could be.
That's what you generally forward wall off for.
Right.
It's actually a map where multi-Rax Reaper is better. If you have to multi-Rax Reaper on certain maps, this one is slightly better than some of the others. Just because you can go up and down a couple different points of the main quite nicely. Looks like he takes a Rax, a Gas, and then a second Rax. So yeah, he's going to multi-Rax Reaper. It's very off-meta. it's the sort of thing that I only really talk about very often because there's a couple people who still really like to multi-rack Reaper a lot. Ziggy, Kellezer.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? Like, and they multi-rack Reaper like way more often than they ever should. So yeah, very off-meta build from SpeCial. What do you think about it, CG? It's not one you see often, right?
It is not. There's the no third racks. Well, anyways, I was glad you brought up Ziggy because in one of the North American qualifiers for this, Johnson over Ziggy, it was literally every game was a 3 racks, and it worked out better and better as the series went on, which is like not what you would expect. But by the third game, Johnson just couldn't defend at all, so we ended up tapping out before like the 6-minute mark. Don't expect that to happen here, but it does certainly give you a lot of control in that early game, really set the pace, delay that third base, or the best case scenario I would say for the Terran is that it delays/denies a third base because the Zerg gets a little like overconfident, right? They're like, oh, it's not a big deal. And then suddenly their Lings also gets taken out before the speed kicks in, and their Queens are their only defense, and they're just kind of like turtling on 2 base, which a Zerg doesn't want to do. So that's the best case scenario, but I don't think it'll happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. It is also only 2 racks, right? So this can oftentimes be 3 racks, and then it's a bit more committed. It also needs to do more damage. In this case, it will trade out with Lings, then the Queen starts showing up. I feel like with 2 racks, he doesn't even commit into it that hard. He only builds 3 Reapers, and he's straight into Marine production. It's almost like like the TVT in-base 2 racks opener.
Yeah.
It's basically like that. But it just gives him 3 Reapers, a slightly later command center. You can see soO making a lot of Lings, though, so it is working in terms of giving SpeCial a good eco advantage, right? Because his own CC isn't that delayed, and yet soO is building so many Lings he wouldn't usually build at this stage of the game.
You're right about that, and he's even going to go to the third CC here. So if soO were to make these Lings and then not be able to do anything with them, big thumbs up, right? Just SpeCial's build. But my fear is that he makes a decent amount of Lings, speed kicks in, he takes out the Reapers, and we're on a slower factory as well. And then he tries to, repair this wall for a long time. Yeah. I mean, that is the worst case, though, is that he has to repair a wall unless his body goes down. That would be a disaster. But I think that soO immediately going back into drones after only these Lings, I think that's good enough, right? He takes care of the Reaper presence. He keeps tabs on what's happening over here, the addition of the tech labs or reactors or what have you. And he goes into a drone game. So I think that would be fine for the Zerg's point of view. Actually, a quicker layer than I was anticipating. Maybe going to go right into that Spire.
Yeah. It's just a weird game because obviously I think soO looks at this and he sees the Marines. He's like, oh, well, where are you at in general right now? It's a hard one to call because, again, you don't usually play against this. Even if you play against 2 racks or, usually it's 3 racks and usually you make more Reapers. So it's just hard to find out where you are. So yeah, faster lair. I almost want to say that I don't think the faster Spire is that great because this is going to end up being, 2 racks building Marines very early on. You can have a good Marine count to help deflect mutas. He's building that fusion core as well. So he's looking like he wants to play Bio, but then he's building Hellions and a BC behind it. And then maybe he can still go Bio.
Yeah.
It's just this entire game has question marks all over it.
He is pushing off what we'd usually expect from Bio, right? Like the faster stim or the... he actually has enough to get stim, but he's not getting it yet.
Because he wants the BC.
But exactly. He wants the battlecruiser is very, very expensive. The Overlord from soO would have been able to see the timing of the 2 gases, which I think might have been nice to kind of give him a clue as to whether it's mech or Bio, but that did die, so we're still waiting on our answer as well.
I feel like soO kind of knows that this is a build SpeCial does because the Spire doesn't make... rushing the Spire this quick against what looks to be 2 racks into Marines doesn't feel great. It's amazing against a fast battlecruiser. So I really feel like soO is almost just ahead of the game and just kind of knows what's up, knows what SpeCial is doing. He's like, yeah, I can handle this. Let's see if he can handle this attack, though. Marines and Hellions are showing up, and this is going to put the Queens to the test. And of course, losing Queens now will really open up some opportunity maybe for the BC, although the Spire that quickly, maybe not so much. He will get in the mineral line already, a few drones dropping. There's going to be 6, and that's maybe about it because, well, the Queens are going to be there, and SpeCial sees the Spire that he won't be too happy about.
Yeah.
And soO is just going to clean up in its entirety.
I don't think you're wrong where you're talking about, the Bears being able to build Marines, but as okay as that attack, kind of started out with, it definitely surprised Sue. Maybe a couple more Lings would have really been the perfect answer. It didn't do ultimately I think what it wanted, which was to really offset the queen count, really get tabs on the opponent, not see a Spire, right? Like it was hoping to see maybe a Roche Warren or Evolution Chambers. And instead, it sees what it does. That's going to give him some knowledge, and that's always better than not seeing it, of course. But I mean, he's going to be up against someone who can react to the battle cruisers, who can get the strong footing of bullying back the mech player, who's still going to take a long time to really get production up, right? And that's where maybe he's a little bit concerned. But 6 Mutas first, and then perhaps into the Corruptors. We'll see if the battle cruisers can still do something, even against the faster Spire. And whether Stu actually kind of figured out this build or not, I mean, it's still in question. They will be playing each other quite a bit on the ladder for sure, but this is an auto attack, right? And bit of a weird game in general. Ling's on top of the Hellions, Queen's on top of the battle cruiser. 8 Mutas could try and help, but yeah, I think it's better off at doing what they're doing, which is going right across the map. There is a missile turret though, so it's not like they're going to do very much, but now Stu could add on Corruptors, especially once these Mutas scout that it is in fact mech.
Yeah, it depends as well though a bit, right? Because he might just say, ooh, I can go into even more Mutas here. With the Roaches on the way, I definitely think Corruptors are the more likely choice. You can see a huge round of drones when he sees this mech. He's like, okay, cool. Gonna replace a few that I lost, and then twice that again just to really buff up my count. Yeah, good defense against the Mutas special, so he won't take much damage to this, but it really is keeping the BCs back at home. The BCs, obviously, they can wander across and then, teleport back, but they'll never get as much done as they would usually like to. As well. Now we see Hydras being added in. We're going to see the Infestation Pit. There's just all sorts of tech coming in from Sue. The Hydras, I suppose, he wants to play like a Roachy Hydra style. It's not something you see a lot nowadays against mech.
A Roachy Hydra-y type of style?
Yeah, just Roach Hydra, but when was the last time you saw like Roach Hydra really being used like against mech, right? It's just not really as much of a thing.
I want to say I've seen it, but I mean, I'm thinking of Roach Ravager more often.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, Roach Ravager, sure, but adding the Hydras is like it's kind of like my question mark here.
He might just be giving himself options, maybe like going into lurkers, which we still haven't seen versus Terran yet in this tournament, but that has been attempted. It's still kind of a thing, but we'll see. I mean, first and foremost, getting to the strong base that is almost 80 workers on 4 bases, right? The Hydras might be his way of dealing with the battle cruisers, since he actually never made Corruptors. And they do add, like, if they're protected by the Roaches, they do have this back line that adds a lot of DPS. But I'm also with you. Seeing him go right into Hydras, spending all of his minerals and gas, that he had right into Hydras, I was definitely surprised by that as well. And mostly surprised by the no Corruptors, considering if you see it's mech, you gotta expect that it's Yamato, and you gotta expect that it's usually 3 battle cruisers, and there's a third one.
That 1 health BC teleport away. Could not have left it closer. So yeah, the Hydras obviously help against the BCs. It's just the Hydras don't really do as well against the rest of the mech army. They're weak to Blue Flame Hellions. They don't have the corrosive bars the Ravagers do to help against the tanks. So if you play this kind of ground-based comp, the only thing the Hydras really have, the Roach Ravager doesn't, is the ability to help against the BCs. But then you have the Corruptors. So that's why this style just isn't seen as frequently nowadays, and that's why, like ZG just backed me up on, it's a little bit strange to see Sue just go so heavy into Hydra so quickly. His next step is going to be straight up Broodlord. It's already that Great Aspire building, and money in the bank. There's a couple of Vipers will be the choice. So Sue behind on supply, but a lot of money in the bank, and the second he spends that money, it's not going to be as much of a concern for him any longer.
I would say maybe he was afraid that Special was specifically going to respond to the Corruptors. Like, if we're talking defensively, Corruptors, there's not much Terran can do about that. But if we're talking like an attack, thinking like, I'm going to jump on top of these battle cruisers, maybe he was anticipating Cyclones and missile turrets, which usually are made in preparation for, having to deal with a large ground army. But nope, didn't ever really come over to the other side of the map, right? Like, he was thinking defensive, and now he's thinking Broodlords. So that's how we see Corruptors. But the ground army for him, Roach Hydra Viper, really adding on there. And then for Special, just the mech, the tank mech that we're used to seeing. Not going to double upgrades, though. I mean, I guess his expansion to 4th base was not the quickest it could have been. So his upgrades aren't going to look as impressive as maybe some other mech games we see. And his battle cruisers aren't going to be as buff as they sometimes can be as well. But they are still available for easy takeouts of the hatcheries and teleport out. The scan might go down in the hive to see exactly what's coming out there, so maybe Special can add in Well, he's already adding in Vikings. I was gonna suggest Thors, but I guess he could try to win the Viking War. It's hard to win air against Zerg, but that's a good Yamato there.
Yeah, it's I mean, if you go for it early enough, though, right? Because he's not being caught off guard by broods. He's been casually building up the Viking camp for a while. I do say casually, though, because it is only one starport. And that's what has me worried. Like, if he was already on 2 or 3 starports doing this, I'm like, oh yeah, I can actually get behind this. You know, ground army to push the Hydras back. But it is still only 4 Vikings right now. The broods are here. You're going to see a bit of back and forth. The one thing is, SpeCial has just walked straight up the map and immediately gotten into a siege, and that should make this more difficult for SpeCial than it usually would be.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the army just suddenly appearing in front of the 4th base is not what you want. Creep Spread didn't do a fantastic job notifying him, I guess, but the Viking count also not doing a fantastic job against the Brood Lords yet. They're scared of the Hydras, they're scared of the Queens. The Broodlings are taking out the tanks, although the Hydras are also at least trading. SpeCial could be adding on those Thors now if he thinks the Vikings can't do it, but with all the Hydras gone, actually, I think soO made a mistake there by moving into the tanks and letting his Hydras die. Now even just 2 Vikings and of course those 3 battle cruisers can now bully everything back. No anti-air, no corruptors in production. soO, I mean, he was trying to push that back. He got close to it, but there's still enough left here to bully him.
Yeah, now he doesn't have the anti-air at all. So these Vikings and BCs are going to clean up the Broodlords, and from there, this looks like it's probably going to be all wrapped up. I think you said it perfectly. He pushed through that choke with the Hydras, and I don't think he necessarily needed to push through that choke until he at least, you know, I think you can tank some damage as GG is called, and SpeCial will take game number 2, tying this up 1-1. But imagine as he comes through this choke point, right? Imagine he just lets the Broods come through, and maybe you give up like a Broodlord or 2 to some Viking shots because the Hydras can't zone. But then you bring the Hydras forward after the Broods have killed like 3 or 4 of the tanks. And this is immediately way better. The Hydras survive a lot longer. I think that's what fell apart for soO more than anything during the fight. I think obviously the mech army being able to just waltz up and siege up on top of the base, that's a massive issue. But yeah, the Hydras running through that choke point, that was never going to end up going well. And like I say, yes, you obviously want to protect the Broods, but maybe you could have just sacrificed some damage on the Broods for the sake of staying that, for the sake of not losing the game because you have no Hydras left, right? So
yeah. I think that that would have been the better situation, but I also think the best situation would have actually been dedicating to the air.
Yes.
By the time he was forced to remax, if he had gotten corruptors, it was maybe too awkward. The Broodlords already died, but we're talking about before the attack hit, right? Being in position, getting knowledge that he is trying to go for Vikings, which, to be fair, a lot of Terrans just don't even try. They just immediately add in Cyclones or Thors, so he could build the corruptors. Like, that is a massive difference right then and there, because it only takes, literally with his bank and larva, like 1 round of like, oh, quick, let's make corruptors to combat what was very, very few Vikings. And that would have opened up many opportunities for the Broodlords with nothing else being provided. So that was awkward.
I wonder if it's almost like so's like not used to playing against like no Cyclones almost. And so he's like, he doesn't think, oh, I could just make corruptors and they're going to easy protect the Broodlords. Because, yeah, that would have worked perfectly. Like, a lot of the time, if you make, like, a lot of Corruptors there and the Cyclones just get lock-ons, the Corruptors just melt. And maybe the Hydras do play out better there, but the fact this was just Hellion tank, yeah, I am with you. The Corruptors would have loved to see that. Definitely felt like it would have been just a little bit better off there. And as Eternal Empire is going to be map 3, so now we're really going on to that nice macro-focused map, a map where every player gets 4 or 5 bases fairly easily, fairly frequently. I do feel like we've had some weirder games so far, right? Definitely some weirder starts, some weirder openings. You know, the Roach play in the first game from soO was a little bit different to what you expect when playing against Bio. You know, the second game definitely felt like SpeCial's build was very out there and felt like that itself kind of put the game into an interesting position.
Yeah, it was a very atypical game. The start aside, just the way that we were developing into good old, battlecruiser mech versus Zerg. You've cast thousands of games. I've cast hundreds of games, right? Like, it's just of the last 6 months, the last 3 months, whatever. And we know how those games typically look, and it was just a little off kilter. So it was, well, at least it was a treat. At least we're getting new things here, man. And at least we have a tied up series. In the top right of Eternal Empire, it is going to be the Blue Zerg, soO.
And in the bottom left-hand side, our Red Terran player from Cosmos Esports, it is SpeCial.
No weird front wall off this time. The Reapers, all things considered, not doing too much, but the whole wall off to keep you safe from anything, and then of course scouting if they're dedicating to anything more. I guess that was really what SpeCial was after. Not really trying to delay third bases or get a bunch of drones, but just wall off and scouting and going into some greed. And I can definitely see how that works out. I'm more confused on what soO's response was. I like the other Zerg responses that we usually see better.
It was just weird throughout, right? Because I feel like the Faster Spire didn't really add up for me there, and then what he did with this Mutalisk, it just felt like he made a couple and then was kind of done when maybe he could have made more and really made a thing of it. I don't know. It was like I say, it's just one of those games where I kind of feel like we need to see that play out like a couple more times to really be like, oh, try this or try that, and then we can be like, oh yeah, well, this obviously worked better than that, but it really wasn't a scenario we've seen too much of, if really ever. And so it's very hard to just piece those little things together, and they kind of felt like soO was in that position as well, trying to piece the little things together and trying to figure out what was best and burn him off a little bit from there.
I think that's what it was that he was also trying to piece things together as it went on. There was no perfect knowledge for him that maybe would have let him make some better choices, some different choices. So it could have been, easy defense against the battlecruiser, right into the 80 drones, then you bust out the roaches and battlecruisers can't help defend. It could have been that game, maybe if he had perfect information, but it was odd from start to finish. Now we're into Eternal Empire, as you noted, one of our biggest chances for a macro game, a really, really long macro game. SpeCial busting out the Mech 1 game, Bio before, both off the back of battlecruisers, has now given him the additional flexibility of leaving soO in the dark, right? If he opens battlecruisers, SpeCial can no longer be like, aha, this is in meta, this is exactly what you're doing.
Do you think, obviously, the last couple of games he's obviously gone into BCs, not on the kind of super regular build as well. So now he almost still has a BC build in his arsenal, which hasn't been seen yet in this series, which is just the normal, double gas, drop a fusion core when this starport finishes and play BC from there. So that's still an option while keeping it different from game to game, just the slight little things. So that's something to keep in mind. We'll see what SpeCial does go for. We've seen a lot more. I mean, we've obviously seen a lot more bio in general in TVZ lately, but I do as that's a very fast flare from soO. That's full on two base lair tech. Okay, well, you know what? Never mind anything else I was about to say. soO is going to get aggressive in some way at the very least.
I mean, just the faster Spire. 3-base Spire last game, as we said, it had some potential to really actually just kind of at least slow down SpeCial's opener, but it didn't really work out that way. This game, we don't have a battlecruiser. It's 2-base Spire, which is of course going to be faster. But we do have a weird build coming out from SpeCial again here, and I'm mostly just pointing this out because maybe it's going to give him some scouting that Hellions typically wouldn't. Now, if Hellions scout the third hatchery timing, it's usually two choices, right? A Roach Worm and a Nidus Worm, or it's a faster Spire, which faster Spire seems to be better, more in meta, although usually have a 2-base thing. But anyways, the Medivac, that might actually get the scouting, the confirmation on what it is. So I'm feeling a little more hopeful for SpeCial as he comes in with Widow Mind Drops and Hellions on the left side, actually. He will be getting at least some decent scouting. And sees all the gases taken as well. Could fly into the main if he really wanted thorough scouting. 3 drones, a couple links.
Okay, he gets 4 drones and a few lings. This isn't bad, plus lost mining time. The Hellions will try and go by, but plenty of queens there, so that won't be a success story. Yeah, Baneling Nest, right? So he's just kind of playing a 2-base version of what we usually see, because you're right, it's not weird to see a faster Spire or anything. But usually you go 3 bases, then the faster lair, lair first, right? Not lair off 2-base into Spire and Bane Nest. So this really is some of the faster Mutalisks you will get in ZVT.
Yeah,
but still doesn't really know about it. So
I think that he does. If I saw that correctly, I think he saw the Baneling Nest. And if it's a Baneling Nest, either it's a really cool fake on a Roach Nidus, or it's Baneling Nest, is necessary for that earlier Spire.
But as long as you click on it, right? So,
well, that was a very late third. He started out with the Aliens. He might actually still be piecing things together, but he is building a missile turret, and there's the confirmation on the Spire if it was in doubt. So now he's adding more missile turrets. So maybe it was a little I think I know. Okay, now I really know.
Yeah, I didn't see the Hellions in the 3rd base. I thought he just ran the Hellions up the natural ramp. So Yeah, seeing the lack of a third base probably is good enough info to figure out there's some sort of gas going somewhere, which obviously with the Bane Nest, yeah, Spire. Well, SL turrets will be up. The meters on the way. The meters still give you a lot of map control here. The meters still give you presence on the map. They will stop you from really being able to just move out super easily as the Terran player. And that's the goal here from soO, to really keep the Terran back, because you're going to be on much later Evo chambers and much later upgrades of your own. So you need the meters to keep this Terran player back a bit and to give you a bit of an edge, so that when it comes to a fight, you can get away with being on just Baneling speed and down on upgrades.
Yeah. Oh, there certainly are things you have to sacrifice to do this, and upgrades are absolutely one of them. So you need centrifugal hooks to at least give you that support of the Banelings on creep spread to say, don't come near me, or at least take your time when you come near me, which is something that soO is going to have to really be focusing on, creep spread especially, until he gets a better looking army. But going for such fast mutas, he does certainly hit before any tank timings. We saw yesterday, Lambo doing a more typical 3-hatch, and he still got kind of hit by a very brutal timing on this map, actually. But this is what you were talking about. This fast, the mutas will take control. They'll hopefully keep special back until Baneling speed is done, until creep spread is out, until the 4th base has some health. They take a bit of damage, which so far they're doing an okay job of. But maybe a little bit more here. Some good defense from SpeCial as he is gearing up for a push. He actually loses 2 medevacs, so that's pretty nice. Yeah, loses 2.
Great catch. That's exactly what you want to see, right? Just getting a couple of medevacs right off the start. It's the sort of thing that really keeps SpeCial back, really makes SpeCial think twice about committing, because now he can't lift up and escape with as much during a fight, so he's got to be a bit more cautious at the very start of this already. As the meters are almost coming back in to find the next 2 medevacs. This time they are teamed up with the Marines, though, so no fortune there. But SpeCial's now finding himself already on the edge of this creep spread. But it is the edge of the creep spread that's right on top of the 4th base already, so he's kind of there. First Banelings actually did a little bit more than I thought 3 Banes would in this scenario, but overall SpeCial still not pushing all the way through, as more Banes preparing for the fight.
Yeah, this is the, you can't really just blitz on me. Doesn't look like I have much of an army, but you certainly can't blitz. That's how you die to Banelings, which his army is mostly consisting of. The Widow Mines already being included is nice. No time spent on tanks. Obviously, you knew it was happening, but there's not a lot of them here yet, and one got popped off by those Banelings. SpeCial actually considers this a pretty good position. Despite being a little bit on creep, he's doing a lot of damage to the hatchery and continuing to rally, again, most importantly, the Widow Mines forward. soO is not going to want to be losing this one. He invests into actually defending it, which might work out well. The Widow Mine's not getting particularly good shots at all. Medevac being going down there, and that is going to be a hold. But SpeCial still not willing to give this position up.
Yep, SpeCial is going to be able to just about keep enough army here to stay at the front. soO, the hatchery still alive, is obviously big, but it's so low. I mean, even just a couple units later, might be able to get a denial on that as soO goes all the way off creep to chase this down, because the mutas can chase down the Marine count now, which he's not wrong about. A lot of these Marines are low as well, so the mutas just jump on them and they go down so quickly, and suddenly SpeCial is paying the price for having stuck around after losing a fight for just a little too long. Once again, jumping straight in on the Marines, the Mutalisks, targeting down Widow Mines, and only one Widow Mine gets to go off here. This next one goes down before it fires as well, and the mutas are just going to keep moving through straight onto the Marines and the medevacs, and soO will take a game 3. 2-1 advantage for soO now. Just that fell apart so quickly.
It did. SpeCial seeing that they still weren't upgraded, right? All those Lings and Banelings, that the 4th base was so low, and that he still, had opportunity off of creep. He still had a decent number of units. He stayed there, and I would say that's usually not like a terrible thing, but it clearly ended up being one. soO, lucky for him, when he pulled the trigger, when he wanted to save that 4th base, his investment, like he was actually totally correct in pulling the trigger. Yeah, it took a very good fight. Widow Mines did not really do as much as they could have, and SpeCial got punished for continuing to rally. Not just like continuing to pressure that specific point, but like continuing to rally. If he had maybe units safely back in his natural, he might be holding on, but we would still be talking about like a 30 supply difference, muta numbers growing out of control, and a 4th base that might be weak, but would have been mining. So he had his timing. He almost got it. That was very, very close to killing the 4th base, but soO, his build worked out too well. And now we head to Golden Wall, which has given us a lot of very fun TDZs.
Yeah, this is a map where, I say this every time I cast it, but I feel like the more I watch this, the less I feel I understand about how people like to play TVZ on this map. because it feels like every week there's something new the Terrans are trying, or some new way the Zergs want to expand. It was very popular initially to just expand through the bottom side purely for Terrans. Then there was like take the gold base and play 8 racks. And now a lot of the Terrans are even like, oh, let's just play 4 bases and kind of play this top side of the map versus top side of the map. And it's a massive map when you look at it like that. And it's like, can you really do that? Well, yeah, you can kind of make it work with some of the positions, but it's always kind of a bit of a guessing game as to what you're going to get, because there's obviously choices from the Zerg as well. So we'll see which choices our Zerg in this game makes. In the bottom right, the blue Zerg is soO.
In the bottom left, as the red Terran, he is SpeCial. I was so confused. I think we have our team icons incorrect.
Yes. I was about to do the team intro as well. I was like, wait a second, I need to just double check that one in my head for a moment. But yeah, just the wrong way around. It happens. Easily done.
Flip it. There's a cool little add-on that we use for these tournaments that not only gives us access to the team names, the team icons on the players, but also those big branded logos in the middle of the map, the beautiful TSL in the middle. She looks really, really cool. It's a trade secret. Just kidding. You guys can easily get it too. Well, not this one specifically, but the team icons, yes.
So beautiful, ZG. Look at that.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It actually really matches this map as well. It's like Golden War was made for TSL logo.
You're right. Yeah, it's a nice. The colors here.
Yeah, just
they do. We haven't had a winter map in a long time. I know this is totally off topic, but I do miss them.
I really used to love the wintry maps. Is it because of the? I know sometimes there was FPS issues because they like to make it snow on the wintry maps.
Yeah. Well,
I think that was the thing.
That was a thing. Also, Abyssal Reef is the other one where we had like performance issues on. But things floating up was always like such a cool little.
I think in the next map pool, maybe the next one or the one after, I think we're gonna have that again. Not Abyssal Reef, but like flowing, because there was a really cool map in the TeamLiquid map contest tournament. That was it was a good map, and it's like underwater based, so everything floats up again. So I think it's got a pretty good chance of making ladder. So.
Okay. So we can talk about, we can be it for a while again. Say down here.
Finally, we don't have to talk about the game anymore. We can actually just talk about units floating around.
Thank God.
That's what we live for.
We did have a SpeCial go for an SEV scout, and then he did bother mining out the middle of the map. We saw excellent use of this middle map problem with yesterday's games. With who was it? Cure? Renovation? Oh shoot, I don't remember right now. But the beat bopping back and forth. Darn, I thought I had it, didn't have it. Anyways, the middle of the map being mined out is preferable to trying to mine out the back rocks if your opponent is also doing it, just because, you don't want to give that Zerg an opportunity to do run-bys. In this case, you get to go Helleen's left, bottom or top rather, but the Zerg doesn't know which one, and, well, in this case, soO won't be expanding behind there, but that would have been an option. I don't think SpeCial's going to do anything more with the middle of the map being mined out, but if these were being currently mined out, if he saw a third base being taken, he could kind of redirect his idea of the game to the south, but it's actually going to be very typical. And in fact, another 2-base layer, so that's why we don't see a third hatchery yet.
Which is, I think that's very important as well, right? Because being able to see the bottom side, now he's going to know there's no third hatchery if he checks the top side as well. Whereas if you don't get to check the bottom, you're always guessing yourself, is it a third hatch? Or is it just a 2-base layer or so? In this case, you don't really know. So, in this case, you would be able to know in full information. But a lot of the times, you maybe don't. As you do see, soO has already taken his extra gases, so it feels like it's Spire time once again.
SpeCial doesn't have a third, right? He is maybe prepping for this.
Yeah. Oh, do you think SpeCial thinks it's maybe a Nidus? Because Nidus is very popular in Golden War.
I mean, he could, but I've also seen this as a response to 2-base Spire. The thing is, you can do, exactly what happened last game. You can get away with a third CC against a 2-base Spire. But I have definitely seen this approach to it, which is adding on the barracks, giving you a lot of flexibility of either having a ton of units for defense, which is great, no damage taken, or, of course, having an actual push, which even if they don't have combat shields, they'll still have stim, and they'll still have enough just, collective power to take on what is very few mutas. You don't really want to go into a 2-base all-in from here, though. There's a reason that's kind of dead and gone. So I would see a third CC. That's what I would expect. But first and foremost, you're going to have a push/drop. Dangerous to drop, but you could try it.
Yeah, I mean, just the push in general might be difficult to hold with the Mutalisks. So let's see what SpeCial can bring together here. It's a weird map to push on, though, because of just the size of it, right? It takes a long time to push across. And you don't naturally push into a base either. You kind of push between the natural and the third, and you kind of take the gold base of the Zerg player, and you kind of like hold that high ground area. The Ripper gets cleaned up. So yeah, well, let's see how SpeCial really approaches this. Let's see exactly what SpeCial wants to do. There's a few more Mutalisks just on the way out, so he will now be able to get those across the map and deal some damage. But if he has nothing on the ground, this first drop alone, you get a lot done.
Now, soO hasn't really gotten a lot of information for whether it's 3-base or 2-base, so his expectations of timing is going to be very, very off here. I mean, this drop shouldn't be happening for another at least 30 seconds, if not like a full minute. And then a follow-up tank push, of course, also is going to be very scary. This double drop is going to do some significant damage on top of the creep. It's actually going to get into the drone line and on top of the queens. He's going to go right for them. They could even grab the evolution chambers. I think third base would be a better grab than that, but they're feeling a little bit cautious. They did not clear up the creep, so if there were any banelings or heck, even lings in a high enough numbers getting us around. So that was not as scary as I thought it was going to be. That was actually a lot of nothing, but SpeCial was like very aware that something would quickly respond.
Yeah.
So being more cautious, just wants to do this push more than he wants to get damage with that drop, I would say.
Yeah, for sure, right? It makes sense because the moment you lose this drop, you lose a lot of the power of the push. So he'd much rather have one stronger push than this overall attack happening. I don't blame him for that. It's just obviously we get to see everything and we know the possibility that would have been there. This is huge. The Mutas pull this army back home. That's just so much time board for soO. As now he's, well on the way to 1-1, and he might not have 1-1 at the start of this fight, but he's going to be much closer to it if he can hold on for a little bit more time. And the moment he hits 1-1, he's going to be ahead on upgrades because SpeCial only went for the +1 attack. This is very committed on the 3 racks, 2 bases.
Yep.
So this is going to be big, and SpeCial thinks that there's a base on the bottom side. Or no, he just wants to siege up on the bottom of the map and pressure into the main with the tanks. That makes more sense. I talked myself through it. But then he backs away.
Yeah, right. No, I don't know if that's the best idea though. Like that might be exactly what he's thinking of doing, but I don't know if it's the best idea. Regardless of that, we're actually having soO feeling bold and brave out in the middle of the map, looking to catch a bunch of reinforcements. They were a decent number of them. He wasn't catching the line of ants, but he had enough to actually push back. Like a third of the army? That was a significant amount, but it is only a third. 2/3 still left over on this side of the map, looking to get to this high ground. I don't know if this is the best idea. Now I can talk about why I didn't think this was a great idea. I don't know if this is lethal enough fast enough,
Yeah.
Like, he gets to be like, oh, I'm really scary, but soO just says, okay, I'll buy time, I'll get my upgrades, I'll buy more banelings and more transfuse, and only one tank as well.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. He's actually going to start mining out these minerals. If soO's mutas were back at home, he can actually target down those mules. It's not really an issue. The thing is they're not back at home because they're over here still dealing damage, and now SpeCial is just getting 0 reinforcements across the map, and he's obviously losing mineral mining and SCVs, and it's just a disaster. And soO just takes K number 4, really just jumping and catching those tanks and the reinforcements on the left-hand side. SpeCial was not going to recover from that. He needed absolutely everything to go and fight and to do well, and when you lose like a good portion of the army, especially the important tanks in that situation, it's really, really tough to make happen after that.
I just don't think you would expect the Zerg player, the scared defending Zerg player who's so dependent on mutas to do what he did, to be in the middle of the map, taking on that army. The idea was certainly that you would be the one on the aggression, and you would be scaring him with the push to the south and easily able to reinforce, especially if you don't do the one at a time, which he made sure not to do. Ling run-bys would not have stopped that, but Ling plus Baneling plus mutas absolutely did. So... soO making the absolute right decision. Let's just all give kudos to soO, who has played some very good ZVT. And I really didn't expect him to. I had Innovation winning for multiple reasons, right? And he still took that series. And now taking down another very good TVZ player in SpeCial. But at least this is, once again, the winner's bracket. So if you're cheering for SpeCial, no worries, guys. He goes down to the lower bracket, which he certainly has a chance to still win out from. But soO is looking quite good.
We stand as one. Are you gonna give me orders?